Hello everyone, and welcome to Community Corner here on Darshan TV. Community Corner is a monthly segment hosted by South Asian Americans Leading Together, a national nonprofit organization located here in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. Every month, Community Corner brings you important information about issues affecting our everyday lives as South Asians here in the D.C. metropolitan area. This month, we're going to be talking about the upcoming census, which you may have been hearing about. We're going to talk to our guests today to learn a little bit more about the census and why it's really important for South Asians to participate. So joining me in the studio, we've got Terry Au, who's the Director of the Census and Voting Rights Programs at the Asian American Justice Center. And we've got Mo Khan, who's a Programs and Communications Associate at South Asian Americans Leading Together. Mo and Terry, welcome to Community Corner.
Thank you.
So let's start a little bit by learning about the census. As I mentioned earlier, the census is a nationwide count of the United States population where we learn a little bit more about all of the people that live in this country. But Terry, tell us, why is this count so important? What does it tell us?
The real importance of the census is the fact that it allows our communities to get its fair share. Get its fair share of political representation and power through reapportionment and redistricting, as well as our fair share of funding, including $400 billion a year for our communities to be able to put money into schools, into job training, transportation, public safety, and other important services that our communities need.
So what you're saying is that the census data will give us information about how much federal money is going to go into schools and neighborhoods and hospitals. It'll also tell us a little bit about political representation in terms of congressional districts. So it sounds like for a lot of different reasons, this is a very important count for us to participate in.
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit, Mo, about what the census form actually looks like. I understand that there are a number of questions that we'll have to respond to. Can you break down those questions for us?
That's a great question, Deepa. The census form this year is the shortest and simplest form that has ever been used. There are 10 questions, and they ask you things like your name, your age based on your date of birth, your sex, your race, as well as household information, which is things like where do you live, how many people live in your household, etc. These questions really help paint a portrait of America.
So they seem like they would tell us a little bit about the diversity of our communities, not just, of course, the South Asian and Asian communities, but all communities in the United States.
Absolutely.
Now, Terry, why is the census capturing information on race, and what are the different race categories that people can actually check off?
Well, the data collection on race is particularly important for a number of reasons, including being able to enforce the civil rights laws of this country. Things such as the Voting Rights Act, or as I mentioned, the Civil Rights Act, employment discrimination laws, these are all in part based on census data. The way that the Census Bureau has classified Asians as a racial category is to define Asian as people who have origins from the Far East, the Southeast Asian countries, and the South Asian countries. So, for example, these would include China, India, Pakistan, Japan, Vietnam, and so forth.
Now, I noticed on the census form, and we're showing you a look at the census form right now, that there are a number of Asian groups that are listed, and I see that Asian Indian is one of them. Now, what if I'm not Asian Indian? What if I'm, say, Pakistani, Bangladeshi, Nepali, Sri Lankan? How do I reflect accurately what my race group is?
Well, that's a great question. It's important that everybody represent exactly how they believe they should be represented in the race question. And for other communities that are not actually captured within the categories that are listed, people should check off the other Asian box, and then you'll notice that there's actually a write-in space next to it, and it's very important to write in the group with which you associate yourself. That is to make sure that our communities get the accurate count of where we reside in this country, as well as the accurate number, so that we can make sure that our community's needs are being met.
So let me just make sure I get it straight. For those of us who come from some of those countries you listed, we'll be counted as Asian under the census.
Correct.
And the U.S. government for all intents and purposes.
Correct.
And for those of us from South Asia, where we might be tracing our background to India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, perhaps even the Indo-Caribbean community. There are ways for us to reflect our race group as well.
Absolutely.
And you've mentioned to us that one way is to check Asian Indian if you are Asian Indian, and if you are not, to check the other Asian box and to write in what you are.
Correct.
Mo, I want to hear a little bit about the process and the timeline. Now, I understand that the census is right around the corner. Tell us a little bit about how do I get the form and what the timeline looks like.
Forms are mailed out to every household in America in March. And so April 1st is considered Census Day. So you should fill out the form based on what your household will look like on April 1st. And that's also a very handy reminder to mail back your forms. So from April to the end of the summer, census workers will be visiting households to clarify information on the form, or if households have not returned their form, to get census information. And then in December, the Census Bureau will deliver the final numbers based on the entire 2010 census to the president. If you haven't received a form, you can request one using the telephone questionnaire assistance line at 866-872-6868. You can also go to a Be Counted site, and there are many all over the community, and fill out a blank form and mail that in.
So it sounds like if I don't get a form in the mail, for some reason, there are still some ways that I can get the form, either by calling that number you mentioned or by going to a site in my community where I can get the census form.
Absolutely.
So just because I didn't get it, I should not think that I shouldn't fill it out.
Absolutely. It's important for everyone to be counted.
So now that we have a better understanding of why it's important that each of us completes a census form, and also an understanding of when we can expect those forms to arrive, I want to ask our guests a couple of more questions to understand the importance of participating in the census this year. So Terry, I understand that for many communities, college students, the homeless, minorities, immigrants, that there often is an undercount of the populations in these communities. Tell us a little bit about why this is true.
Well, for the Asian American community and the other communities you talked about, historically there has been an undercount, that is, people within those communities are actually missed by the census, and so their numbers are inaccurate in that it doesn't show how many people actually exist for these communities. A lot of these reasons go towards issues such as distrust of government, perhaps living in untraditional living situations where they may not actually get the form, and then not having the information or knowledge about going to a Be Counted site, for example, or how they could get a form if they didn't actually receive it in the mail.
And I'm sure there are also